And we are back live, friends. The Spin Cycle with you, episode 5. Andrew Southwick, R.C. Williams, and Julianna Armand here to, we're going to land the plane for this week. We hope everyone has had a good week. We appreciate those of you who have been with us here on these episodes this week. And we're going to break down today President Trump's address from last night, which was all about election integrity, and we're bringing up 2020. I want to just start, friends, if I can. I want to play about 2 minutes of the speech, and I think it's the most important 2 minutes because it's President Trump's main case. So let me put this on the screen, and we'll let this play through, and then we'll break it all down.
The cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason. As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job. And they did everything possible to do exactly that. Going on, this document says, and this is by the CIA, the strategy included efforts to use Chinese contacts with big U.S. companies to influence U.S. business leaders to turn against the President of the United States of America. The Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him, as many as they could, and they didn't care what they said. The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them, charged them billions and billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and built the strongest military anywhere in the world. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world. These are exact quotes from the CIA reporting.
Okay, so that's the main case from last night. Welcome those of you who are checking out the podcast here. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to set up the scene. All right. He is bringing up documents, and these documents are damning. And it is incredible that he had these documents in 2020, and he's got evidence from back. He's citing evidence from all the way back in 2018. Here's the thing. It's 6 years later. We had this evidence in 2020. We didn't do anything about it. We had it the 3 months after the election, but before Trump left office. We didn't do anything about it. Then President Trump did encourage us to protest peacefully, and that is what he said. January 6th, we gathered. Some trespassed, and that's on them. Some did some vandalism, that's on them. But by and large, that was nothing like the summer of Floyd. We all know that. We know that January 6th was likely an FBI plant anyway for the photo op, so they could have the January 6th talking point, they being the progressives. But people went to prison for years, and we have this information. Then we get Biden and we have that whole fiasco, and President Trump comes back in saying that he'll be our vengeance. And we thought, okay, vengeance for the COVID nonsense and Fauci. We're gonna see the Epstein files released. Remember, in fact, even prior to some of these things, right at the end of Trump's term, his attorneys are saying they're going to release the Kraken on the election integrity, so on. And we all remember that night in November, going to sleep, and Trump was ahead by a couple of million votes, waking up the next day, and all of a sudden, wouldn't you know, every one of them ends up for Joseph Robinette Biden. And we all said, that doesn't make sense. Boarded up windows, locked doors, plumbing leaks, apparently, all kinds of weird things happening in all of the swing states, with all of them ending up with just enough votes to tilt the election to Biden. And right after President's speech last night, President Trump's speech, it was about 27 minutes long. It was interesting to see the immediate response from particularly conservatives online. You have the conservatives and the media talking heads and the independent media and so on, many of whom I do respect. They came out instantly and said, you're going to have to watch the narrative, because there's going to be a handful of conservatives, or a good portion, who are going to say, okay, yeah, but so what? You're not going to do anything about it. No one's going to be prosecuted, et cetera, et cetera. They tried to frame that. The initial thing was trying to frame that as a talking point. And I'm just going to tell you, that's not a talking point. We have evidence year after year after year of crimes being committed by our rulers. In some cases, crimes against humanity, worldwide global experiments on concoctions and illnesses and all kinds of things, lockdowns, the destruction of our economy, the forcing of us into a digital surveillance age, and no one is held accountable. And I think one of the things that frustrated some folks, and that frustrated me last night, was not that these documents are released and that there is some heavy evidence in them. That's fine. Let's get Chris Wray in handcuffs and then let's have the trial. You know, James Comey, if you remember, Trump 1.0, when he came out with his speech right before Election Day and listed all the crimes that Hillary Clinton was guilty of, and then said, but never mind. I think the thing that people just find unbelievable is the fact that we have hearing after hearing, we have document dump after document dump, and no one is held accountable. For example, if the 2020 election were so stolen as it has been characterized to be, what happens to everything to every bill, every piece of legislation that Joe Biden signed? Every one of them should come back under scrutiny and perhaps even be overturned, because all of that would have been due fraud, would it not? How about all the taxes that you and I paid? Democrats suck. Yeah, they're about open borders and sealing elections. Yeah, if we're in the margin of cheating, it's going to happen. That's for sure. You got that right. Thanks for being with us. But how about all the taxes that we paid during the Let's Go Brandon? There it is. I can't say that live, but I got you. All the taxes that we paid that were, Joe Biden's term, the Biden administration's taxes, shouldn't we get a refund of those? If this is if this is all fruit of the poisoned tree, that should all be coming back to us. And by the way, and all these people, the Faucis, the Rays, the Comeys, go down the list, they should be perp walked and not just a non-criminal hearing, but they should be in criminal trials then, if this is true, if these things are true. If this is true, it is earth-shattering here in America. Now, I have a couple of theories, and I'm sorry I'm going on. I'll turn it over to you guys in just a second. But I do wonder a couple of things. Number one, President Trump is a great politician. Why are the Democrats against the SAVE Act? Well, Democrats are against everything that Republicans are for because it's third grade all the time, no matter what. Okay. But here's the thing. Republicans act the same way, most of them. All right. Most of DC is brain challenged because they want to cheat, but both of them do. Come on, let's be honest. But they're against SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act isn't necessarily God's gift to everything. It requires the Real ID as the enforcement mechanism. And Real ID, as we know, is going to be used for mass surveillance and tracking and trailing of you and I, the American citizen. So, there are ways to do that. But they're going to put the SAVE Act now, tried to tie that with the NDAA to merge U.S. and Israeli armies together and make a must-pass bill of things that are really going to I think hurt America. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm getting sidetracked there. Back to what I was about to say. President Trump is a master politician. He's a master marketer, and he's brilliant at it. He knows how to run the room. He knows how to control the media. He is a smart person. You don't get to those places. You don't have his kind of portfolio without being an intelligent individual. I don't want to take any of that away. So you're President Trump, and you just destroyed the economy with your response to COVID at the end of your term. You know that coming into this next election, the 2020 election, the Republicans are going to get taken to the woodshed because people are looking for a change. You're in the middle of this quote unquote pandemic. All these draconian measures are happening. We just blew out the budget and blew out the spending. And you also probably know that you're going to need to spend that much money again because of the damage done to the economy, because you need to make sure that Americans don't feel what is actually happening to the economy. So another round of checks and another round of checks. We got 3 rounds of checks, if you recall. So if you don't want to take the hit for the economy, maybe you don't mind. I doubt that. Venezuela, China, all these places that have elections, they're not fair. But anyway, if you don't want to take the blame, maybe Trump doesn't mind losing in 2020, because then you can come back later as the avenging hero, which he said, I'll be your vengeance. And that kind of works. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a political calculation. And I wouldn't put it past any politician to make that kind of calculation in that time. Try to hang this economy that's going to stink around the neck of Biden and the Democrats, then come back in, and now you're a victim. Now you can pretend that you don't own this, even though it did start on your watch, and the policies that you are perpetuating now and supporting are not helping the economy at all. But you can always go back and say, well, but there was just so much damage done. I don't know what to do. I wonder about that. I also wonder because there was a lot of China in this speech. China is meddling. China is meddling. China is meddling. Friends, I also think that this was part tactical on the global political stage, because I would be willing to wager that China is helping Iran right now. I would be willing to wager that we go in and blow up a piece of Iran's infrastructure. China's in the next day rebuilding it or helping them to rebuild it. So you got to put them on notice too. You got to put them on blast, so to speak, as the kids say these days. But again, until people are held accountable, and at this point, to me, accountability, I don't want to see. The other thing that we saw online was, Republicans coming out and saying, oh, look, see, finally somebody said it. Somebody's laying it out. It's not finally. People have been saying this for 6 years. It's just that some of us were put in jail. Many of us were shadow banned or censored or otherwise. And the same Republicans that are now saying, yeah, the 2020 election was stolen because Trump said it, they were the ones saying, be quiet, it's fine. They were behind Mike Pence's certification and telling all of us we needed to be quiet and everything else. The same people, by the way, they were also saying mask up and jab up and everything else. And I believe the only reason they're on board now is because they saw what happened to people like Thomas Massie when they publicly disagreed with President Trump. He ran him out of the party. And I think one of the frustrating things is that then we see this, And we see all this evidence laid out, and we're like, well, where are the people sitting in the jail cells? At this point, a speech saying it doesn't matter. Even releasing documents doesn't matter. In fact, perp walking them doesn't matter. The only walk I want to see is, okay, if you've got these people, why didn't we hear, I'm instructing my DOJ and the FBI we're going to be making contact to X number of individuals, whether you don't want to divulge their names or not, doesn't really matter. But I'm instructing them to go get these, and we are beginning this investigation, and prosecutions are forthcoming. Oh yeah, still those that are defending the way we behave in America are saying, well, they're doing it again. You're seeing, well, remember, this is 4D chess. You're seeing short-term pain, long-term gain. We're seeing trust the plan. We're seeing, hold on to your seatbelts. Justice is coming. Didn't we get all this hype with Epstein? Didn't we get all this hype with the COVID nonsense? Didn't we get all this hype, crying out loud, with Hillary Clinton and what she did on the campaign? The Trump derails against FISA for spying on his campaign, which they absolutely did, and now he's championing FISA and surveillance. The only thing that really would matter now is to see those who are guilty of this, or somebody being walked to their cell and the bar is closing shut and throwing away the key. Because until the check clears, so to speak, none of this matters. And the other thing that this could be too, and it probably partially is if you are a smart Republican, you can see there's some trouble coming at the midterms. This is great cover to say, well, look what happened. Because the proactive action that Donald Trump did say was he was going to send a letter to the states advising them to look out for this kind of fraud, and that we should be careful, because look at all this happening, and so all the evidence that he laid out, et cetera, so let's be on the lookout. Okay, fine. But who's going to be held accountable? At this point, it's accountability or nothing. None of this matters without accountability. And the reason people say, well, so what, is because we have no evidence that anybody in that crowd, Republican or Democrat, will be held accountable for anything they do. For crying out loud, Congress itself appropriated hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay hush money to people that they were actively sexually assaulting. And we know that because they admitted it. So if we think that somehow now that they're looking for justice, I don't see any evidence to that at all. And this is Republicans and Democrats. And my issue here does not center on the person of Trump. It centers on what our government is doing and has been doing, and their patterns so far. Now, I would love to be wrong. I'd love nothing more to be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. It's fine. Maybe I'm full of it. Maybe I'm just a mumbling loser and a know nothing, and that's fine. But if somehow prosecutions actually do happen, exactly. Hey, Valerie, good to see you on Facebook. Exactly. There were no new arrests. There were no prosecutions. That's exactly what I'm saying. And even if there was an arrest, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter unless there's a conviction at this point, unless somebody's sitting in a cell. It doesn't matter. This is all theater. It's for other purposes. I believe it is to accomplish certain things, but I don't think it has much to do with justice over this particular issue. Oh, okay, guys. I have a little bit more on this, but I'm going to stop here because that was like an 18-minute monologue, and I apologize for making you sit there. But honestly, unless we're going to have people in prison cells paying for it. You know what? How about this? We don't even have to put them in prison. I have an idea. How about this? Let's take everybody who's a suspect. We'll prosecute them. Okay, we'll have the fair trial, and then we'll take all the guilty people and we'll buy them an all-you-can-eat buffet at Taco Bell. Okay, at least there will be some kind of consequence. All right, that will be lasting. And they will be sitting alone in a room for a long, long time. At least we will have that, if nothing else. All right, you guys talk for a while. Gosh.
I'll just start by saying that we're at the point now that we just have to recognize the fact that, what you see is the evidence. I mean, in forensics, we talk about when you're seeing points of evidence that leads you to a conclusion, we can't conclude otherwise. Okay. RC and I were so politically involved once upon a time, and we actually started backing away going, whoa, this is like really negative. There's a lot of criminality stuff going on over here. We didn't want a part of what we were seeing. And we said, we retracted and went and said, you know what? We need to be looking at Watchman Action, only talk about Watchman Action, and telling the Watchmen that you see this. I mean, everything that you said, Andrew, was completely spot on, 100% spot on. I don't even have anything to add to that. Right. But we're saying, hey, Watchmen, you see exactly what we're seeing. How are we getting together and saying, we're not going to deal with this anymore?
Exactly. And nothing that I said, all I did was I just recounted what we've lived through for the past 6 to 8 years.
Exactly.
And that's only that small microcosm of time. And in that small microcosm of time, we've now seen the pattern, up front and in person. I'm sure, obviously, clearly it was going on prior to that. We just didn't know enough about what we didn't know. But now they're doing it right in front of our faces. And for President Trump to come out and make this speech, if people are not held accountable, what is it then? Hey, look at all these guilty people. We're going to do nothing about it. What are you going to do?
Andrew, so you got a couple of things in there. You got the trust the plan in there. You got the 2 more weeks. You got all that in. But here's what you guys missed. And I'm doing this for the audience too, because I'm going to tell you why you didn't see the stuff that you're saying that you didn't see. It is simply because you did not go to Real Raw News and get the EBS feed of Trump's speech. Now, I'm saying that for a bit of levity. People were online yesterday talking about, this is going to be the activation of the EBS system. The EBS system died years ago. Coming from a broadcaster, it's now the EAS system. So let's stop that foolishness, right? And Real Raw News is a satire site, right? Nobody's in Gitmo or anything like that. Okay. That said, Andrew, I think that the way that you walk people through, and I encourage people, if you're watching this after the fact, make sure you go back and listen to Andrew's monologue, because you broke down the entire core of the frustration for Americans who want to agree with President Trump, right? And great, maybe whatever is going on in Fort Pierce with the grand jury, this was timed in some way. It is not an excuse, though, for the 6 years of having it and not dropping the hammer and showing people that justice is truly blind. And if you do bad things will happen to you. There is a consequence for doing those things. Andrew, we talked about it earlier this week on the Spin Cycle. You asked me, can Democrats take Trump's finances and leverage something like that in the midterms? And my response to you was, yes, but here's what's interesting. We're also one bad event away from the midterms being completely upside down. And now what do you see? You see that China has interfered, and I think they probably continue to interfere, along with any other country that has a vested interest in our instability. They're still doing it, right? But it also gives cover, like you said, for other stuff that's going on. Now you have the cover to go in and justify the Save America Act, which includes the Real ID, which is a crackdown on freedoms, right? It's much easier for you to say, well, look, we need to do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and maybe we should hold off, or maybe we should do all of these things. Now it's been justified in the minds of people who really haven't been paying attention. And that scares me, because one of the things we talk about here on Culture Crossroads and on the Watchman Brief and in everything we write and everything we do is the importance of vigilance. And when you don't have it and you're not willing to work, how your freedoms are chipped away at. Dovetailing back in, and then I will stop, is this speech last night is this microcosm of, hey, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to drop it, here's the facts, kind of like you're going to do a bunch of executive orders, but you're not going to codify anything into law, which means you basically allow the other side, when the tide turns, to weaponize all of these things against you or take away any power that you had. I honestly believe, Andrew, if we are not living in the movie Idiocracy, we have to be at the front door. There are just some days where I have a hard time with this. And so, was the information important? Sure. But what's more important is what you actually do with it and what you do about all the stuff that you were shoveling.
Our friend Valerie Wirtz notes, she's watching on Facebook, stop the distractions. It feels like we're constantly being reminded that there are bad actors somewhere else, while we're told to settle for the lesser of two evils. The American people deserve better than endless talking points and political theater. We deserve truth, transparency, and accountability applied equally, no matter the party or the person. Enough with the distractions, show the results. The message last night was, hey, we know that you know that we know that you know, and hey, they and maybe they realized Israel passed off base, so they got to reel them back in. And Valerie, thank you for the comments. But it is true. Yeah, they know that we know, and they don't care. And again, if I hope that we're on here in a week or two doing a great mea culpa for this episode, talking and we're talking about the prosecutions that have come from this giant document dump, so to speak. All right, but and there are damning parts of this document dump, but you're exactly right. You know where a lot of the frustration from the right comes from is the fact that we actually want to support what President Trump and the administration is doing. The Republican Party is the national representative for conservatives, and because they have not represented conservative interests, at least in the minds of many on the right, including myself, it is endlessly frustrating, and it certainly makes Trump 2.0 look like, if it's not just a vanity project so Trump can put up statues of himself and rename things after himself, then it's really a giant grift so that those who have access and who have the timing in the stock market can make as much money as possible on all these fronts, from pharma to tech to war to solar and energy and everything else. Take them while you got them, because this train ain't going to stay on the tracks very long, and we're going to have to move into some other, I don't know, digital currency of some kind. But it's frustrating because we want to be like, yeah, this is it. And I want to be able to do that. And I really wanted to come away from last night's speech with something concrete that, like, okay, you know what? There's a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, maybe there is a quote unquote trust the plan. I don't see a plan. I don't see one that's been articulated. I don't see a plan about Iran. I don't see a plan about the economy. And when you have people, many of us struggling from paycheck to paycheck, not making it from paycheck to paycheck. In fact, we're going from credit card to credit card just to buy groceries, just to buy gas. Meanwhile, we're told by our commander in chief that this is the golden age and the economy has never been better. We look at that and say, what? Really? And then, if nothing else, hold evil people accountable, and you refuse to do that, which leaves us then really an option to say, well, there must be a reason you're not holding them accountable. What could that be? Could it be the fact maybe that there's too many people in on this, and if you start holding people accountable and start tugging that thread, your house of cards comes down?
So we always talk about self-interest, don't we? Right? It's all about what's my pocket needing at the moment. I'll keep the charade up. In parenting, we talk about redirecting the children. When they get really upset, you redirect their attention to something else. And what Trump did last night was trying to redirect us to look at something else. And the fact of the matter is that we're saying, hey, Trump, we see exactly what's going on. Why are you not addressing? Oh, that's right. The criminals are not going to prosecute themselves. The criminals are not going to stop themselves. They're not going to stop their gravy train. Come on. We see what's going on here. At some point, we just need to take a stand and say, from this moment and from this understanding, what they're doing, we see very clearly, because Father tells us that we will know them by their fruits. And I was reading Ezekiel 33 this morning, and it says 33:8, admonish the wicked of his way. Okay, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at wickedness, and the church needs to stand up. The good people need to stand up and say, we're not going to tolerate this wickedness in our country. Who was it that said that when we see a treasonous government, it's our responsibility to take care of that government? We are the first line of government. We, the people, are the first line of government. It is our responsibility to make sure that our country is saved. What are we doing about it?
It should tell us a lot that if we are a nation of government by consent of the governed, and we, the people, really are the government, it should tell us a lot that it is the government who demands our financial records every year, not us demanding theirs.
That's right.
It should tell us a lot that the flock cameras are pointed at our homes and our cars and not their offices and their dark, smoky back rooms.
That's right.
And until we start demanding that kind of transparency, say no. The other thing I did hear, RC, I don't mean to count. I know you got something. Don't lose your thought.
You're good. You're good.
I listened to an interview yesterday. It was on Dr. Drew Pinsky's podcast, and he had an author on, the author of a book called Run Right, and I forget his name, but it's called Run Right, and he's a political strategist, and you know, if people are wanting to run for office, he helps them. Okay, well, where's the best way to do that? And they were talking about political and electoral strategy for conservatives and how we can win more effectively. And of course, he said, well, it's going to start local. Pick races you can win, even if you got a swings, you can win those over, because eventually that boils up to, city and statewide level, and that's going to boil into the federal level. It's a long-term plan, but it is what it is. And one of the things he said, though, is that, it's funny, no matter what, you can talk to a Democrat and a Republican, you can talk to a liberal and a conservative, or even a progressive and a conservative, and they may agree on a number of hot button things. They may agree that our government doesn't hold each other accountable and lets criminals walk free because they have access and money, or because they have influence, or because they need them for some kind of reason. They may agree that they don't want flock cameras and mass national surveillance. They may agree that we're not really sure what the point of the Iran war is, but if we're gonna be there, let's win, okay? And let's do it quickly. Let's not just sit mired there, and let for the love of Pete, let's not go 60 days and then another memorandum of understanding and then another 60 days so that we can get around the Constitution because we're afraid to take our case to Congress or to the American people. We might agree on all of that, but when we come to when we come to the ballot box, I wish it was the batter's box. When we come to the ballot box, we just vote for one letter of the alphabet or another. And it doesn't matter the person next to that letter. It's an R or a D. And that's why we can say all these things, but it doesn't change unless we will actually look at the name next to that letter and stop voting under this a cult of party personality and vote for the best person. And if the best person is not there, then we should write them in. And by the way, there was another pundit, a very well-known pundit, and again, somebody that I do respect. I haven't agreed with him much over the past a year and a half or so on some things as much as I did prior, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. His platform's a lot bigger than mine, so he's got a lot more influence than I would. But he said, that Trump really is the king of the Republican Party. And if you're looking at 2028, Trump's going to be the one to tell you who is going to be the Republican nominee for president, et cetera, et cetera. And I got to tell you, he's probably right. And that's unfortunate because we are, and again, it's the Republicans doing it. We are rendering we the people useless by ending around the Constitution, by disrupting and making primaries nonsensical, by not holding people accountable, thereby dissuading and discouraging your own base, and then turning around and telling them that, hey, we're in a golden age, and if you don't like it, well, we don't need your vote anyway. Eventually, you're going to get your wish. And I don't know what that looks like. We are in a messy kind of realignment right now, and I don't think anybody really knows in election cycle, 2 election cycles, 3 election cycles, what kind of coalition that brings. But I mean, my goodness, unless we take our blinders off and actually vote for something instead of just, well, whatever, I'm liberal, so I must vote for a Democrat, or I'm conservative, I must vote for a Republican. We all know they're going the same direction. So how about we vote for America instead?
Andrew, so let me do this. I'll do this straight into the camera because I think this is important, and I hope somebody clips this and takes it. Mr. President, While we appreciate the information that you presented last night, in future correspondence, please respond accordingly when the prevailing narrative will be X, Y, and Z persons have officially been arrested and are being indicted or charged with the following crimes, which will carry the following terms upon a guilty conviction. Thank you for your attention to this matter, the American people.
Amen. I think that's a great place to land the plane here, friends. We can go on, but eventually we start talking in circles. But it did deserve being examined and pointed out, because we, the people, should demand better. I'm not going to say we deserve better, because deserve is kind of it's a little bit of an entitled thing. But if we want a better country, we need to demand better. If we're not going to demand better, then we certainly don't deserve better. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So yeah, RC, nail on the head. Next time, come out with a list of who's indicted and what they're being charged with and what penalties they could have. That's a press conference I want to see. You do that, maybe we're back on the right track. Okay, remember, you can find our show, Culture Crossroads, every Sunday, 5 p.m. Central Time, BECTV.plus, BEKTV.plus, BEKTV.plus, and it's also on demand, BEC TV Plus app, as well as on the Epic Cable company on the Watchmen Action Network, and also Watchmen Brief airs as well. You'll see RC and Julianna on that program, and Spin Cycle airs over there as well, in addition to all of our social medias. And if you are watching on a social media channel today, whether Watchmen Action or a Culture Crossroads or an Andrew Southwick, if you haven't subscribed to our page, please do so. Like the video, help the channels grow, help us grow, because we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't actually believe in it. You notice we're independent. We are not subject to the narratives. We are not subject to the talking points that get released every morning, and they do get released every morning. I know that firsthand. We call the balls and strikes like we see, and we want to point people to the truth. You can do what you want with that. But if you would like the page, subscribe to the pages, we'd appreciate it. All right. Gosh, it's weekend time. It's weekend time. I wonder what's going to happen. The government's going to shut down. What will we do? We'll be just fine, and hopefully so will you. We'll see you again on the Spin Cycle on Monday. Guys, what time are we going to do it on Monday? I have no idea.
12:45.
12:45. We're going to keep that going. All right, 12:45 on Monday, and again, 5 p.m. Central Time, Culture Crossroads. We're breaking down the U.S. and Iran, their military merger, what that could mean. We also, if you haven't seen all of our spin cycles, we've got a spin cycle that we are playing on the program there. And then there is a faith focus that almost exactly mirrors an Old Testament story. And it's a very famous one. So even people casually familiar with Bible stories, it's incredible. And not only that, but it's happening here in America. So that's a big show, 5 p.m. Central on Sunday. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. And we'll see you then.